Hi folks, with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the relative cost of childcare, the issues around procreation, and the declining purchasing power of the wage in the Western world. And I've talked many times about the declining purchasing power of the wage, but we've got a situation today where if you're on the average wage, then something like 50 to 60% of your wage will be taken up in rent, and that's a modest rental. That's not you're renting a waterfront property or something. So even a modest, compact shitbox type place will chew up for an average wage earner 50 to 60% of their wages. Now, if you're on a minimum or somewhere around the minimum wage, you have to live communally to some extent, at least. So, say you've got a 3-bedroom apartment, there would need to be 3 income earners in there to be able to make your existence economically viable. Now, in situations of, say, where so somebody's got children and they don't have relatives who can look after the children, like grandparents or aunties or something like that, a wider family. So they have got a choice of not working or putting the children in childcare. Now, based on one wage, they really, could be a husband and wife with a child, for example, or 2 children. They can't make, it's a real struggle to make ends meet. And without sort of various government benefit programs, they would fall sort of below the water level economically. So maybe they get some sort of subsidy and help for childcare, but the reality is that the other party, assuming the mother, has got to go to work, and even if it's a minimum wage, has got to go out there. But there are economic considerations. So if you look at, say, all-day childcare, then the cost of that childcare, even if it's the budget end of the childcare, the cost of the childcare, once you pay it, is going to be very close to what the minimum wage is going to be. So now, given that most of the jobs out there now are minimum, more than half the jobs available are minimum wage jobs. So this means that I don't know, 3 in every 5 people is effectively on or about the minimum wage, or getting on for it. Now, this means their ability to pay for childcare and still have some money left over, anything more than just a few bucks, money left over is very difficult. And especially the way these things are charged. So if they want to drop the kid off a little bit earlier or pick it up a little bit later, because of, say, work commitments, or maybe the public transport system failed and they couldn't get there in time, then they have to pay penalty fees and late fees and this sort of thing. So just 1 or 2 of those every now and again is enough to blow the budget. So which would make working quite pointless. Now, what some people are doing is they're juggling multiple sort of casual gig type jobs in order to try and beat the cost factor and make enough money to be able to pay for the childcare and have more than just the odd $1 or $2 to put in their pocket at the end of the week. And this is not easy and involves a lot of juggling and running around, a lot of stress, and again, it makes it much more difficult to get back in time to pick the children up before penalty fees of some sort are incurred. Now, the higher the income, the better, the more money you got to play with, of course. But then, if you've got some more money, you'd probably put it a better childcare, because the ratio of very low wage, almost mentally retarded childcarer person who's just using a checklist to do the job, then your kid's not being very well looked after. And cases you hear where the little Johnny pooed his pants, who might only be 1 or 2 years old, pooed his pants, and nothing was done about it, and he was he was there with the pooed pants, with the diapers or the nappies all day. And so, I don't know, I've got kids. If you don't change the nappies pretty quick, they end up getting like a skin rash and so on, which then requires treatment. So if it's not dealt with and the kid's there in its own excrement all day, then you can have some pretty serious consequences in terms of things like skin rashes. So you probably move your kid into a better quality childcare. And once you start moving up the value chain of childcare, the costs go up, and you're starting to throw money at it, which means that even if you're making an above average wage, the cost of childcare could chew up a vast proportion of that. Now let's take the case of where you say the kid's at school and you're looking at so the kid's like 5 or 6 years old now, and you're looking at preschool care. So you've got to get to work by 9. You've got to be traveling to do. You really got to drop the kid off something like 7:30 in the morning. So you've got the preschool childcare, which is available, and you can't get back to pick the kid up until 6, maybe 6:30. The boss wants you to stay back. You can get all these sorts of things. So then you're looking at a 3 or even 4 hour window of childcare. So you're looking at an hour and a half child, 2 hours before school, and then 4 hours afterwards. And you look at the rate there, that can run into $700 a week in childcare. That assumes you don't have to work weekends, by the way. So if you're some sort of roster or something, that may be what you have to do. But you look at that now. You look at the average. You look at somewhere between the minimum and the average wage. So say at least half the workforce is going to be on this sort of wage or less. And then you look at the the Social Security sort of payments, the deductions you got to make in your tax and so on. Then you're looking at something in the order of $35,000 a year take home pay. Look, I'll do round numbers here. Say you're looking at $100 as your take home pay a week. Then you'd be looking at something like $92, $93 would be your childcare payments. So you're only left with $7 afterwards. So you can't do that if you're, say, a single mother or whatever. And if you've got 2 children, you're fucked. You cannot afford it. And even again, if you get a bit of a government subsidy and you get the shittiest, crappiest childcare, which you wouldn't want for your kid, I certainly wouldn't want it for my kids. But some people, of course, have no choice. Even then, you can't make ends meet. So the only solution you've got is if you've got a relative who can look after the children. Now, communal creches, if you're a white person, the government clamps down quite hard on that. Communal creche, it's illegal. Are you registered? All that sort of stuff. Now, I do understand the point of registering, so you can standardise the care, and I do get the point of that, but that's not how it actually plays out in the real world, because they don't apply these evenly. If the brown or the black person wants to do a community creche for their community and their diaspora, that's fine. The government seems completely blind and unable to even touch it or go near it. But if you're a white person trying to do it, then they're climbing all over you. So there's quite a difference in the way that the law and the various statutes and ordinances or whatever, some by local councils, other by state and federal governments. But so that creates a difference. So unless you've got a relative like a grandparent to look after the children, direct blood relative, you're screwed. And they need to, your grandparents need to be financial enough or have the time on their hands or be healthy enough to do it. A handicapped parent or children's grandparent maybe just can't do it. So when you look at all this, so I was talking to a woman recently, and she was saying, look, me and my husband both earn shit money, and the average wage, that sort of thing, less. And if it wasn't for the grandparents, I think it was, I don't know, her or his parents looking after the children, they would have no hope. That's the only reason. That's the only way they can have any children and get by. So And she was talking about the economics of it. She's not very bright, this woman, but talking about the economics of it. And but it's obvious to her, I can't afford it if I've got to pay. It's only the grandparents make it possible. Without the grandparents, we couldn't even dream of having children. So there you go. And I think that's the situation that faces a lot of white people. Now, the difference with brown and black people is they're used to living communally. They have to live communally in the dirt poor shitholes they come from. You cannot survive in a hand-to-mouth type existence unless you live communally, where everybody has to contribute a little bit and help in some way. So there's always someone to look after children, there's always someone to go and work in the fields, always someone to bring, always someone to go to the market, that sort of thing, because they're living in wider families and extended families, second and third cousins and all this sort of thing. And also they're living in smaller communal rural villages. A lot of the peasants that come to the West are living in that sort of, or have lived in that sort of thing. So they recreate that lifestyle here. Now they're able to do it because as soon as they get any sort of residency permit or citizenship, they bring out, and they're allowed to do this, they bring out, the whole wider family. You give a residency permit to one black or brown peasant, and next thing you know, there are 15 people here from the wider family. But it means that they can live 3 or 4 generations to one household, which means they can procreate and do all the sort of things that white people can't do. Our social structure in the West has developed, as part of a consumer society, has developed so we live independently. The desire and the aspirations to live independent, to buy a house, to have your family and your children there. Doesn't mean your parents or your relatives don't come to visit, but because of easy divorce and these sort of things, the whole structure has broken down of what once would have been at least a far more cohesive type of social family structure. And this living independently is fine. And there was a time when the living independently sort of thing was affordable. Most people could do it, but now they can't. A very small number of people now can live independently. But the easy divorce and the fractured families of the white people, that hasn't been corrected yet. That's still all gone to pieces and all gone to shit. Now it may rebuild over time, but in the meantime, the black and brown people can have 3, 4, 5 times as many children as the white people can have, but they don't have to pay for things like childcare and have multiple incomes coming into the household. Now, you need to be pretty good at getting on with your relatives, and I'm sure there are some difficult moments and fractious times, but nonetheless, they're far more experienced at that, and must have a higher threshold of pain than white people do in this. So unless white society rebuilds along communal lines, I don't think it will, but unless it does, then the white families and thus procreation will be at a serious disadvantage financially and numerically in terms of procreation mathematics. And this will play out over the next 50 years where it is guaranteed that white people will become a minority in their own countries. And white people have nowhere else to go. The Indians can always go back to India, or the Pakistanis back to Pakistan. White people have got nowhere else to go. This is it. These are the places that we live in. So if we become a minority in these countries, and I think that's inevitable, I think it's now unavoidable, that the globalists and the governments they control, or the politicians they control, are absolutely rabidly determined to sell us out, then white people will be outbred and also economically out-advantaged, if you will, because the ability for the communal sort of income earning capacity of these third world people of this third world diaspora. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.